Good evening to everybody who is joining us for another webinar. And this time we're talking about Portuguese citizenship, which seems to be something that everybody is really interested in. I know there's a lot of people who move to Portugal, especially from outside of the EU. This is a priority for them, is obtaining Portuguese citizenship and one of the big draws to moving to Portugal, but it's also something that people who have a Portuguese parent or grandparent or spouse or possibly other connection to Portugal are interested in. So we've had hundreds and hundreds of people sign up for this webinar. And I'm very happy to have it because I get a lot of questions about Portuguese citizenship, and it is something that isn't as straightforward always. There's a lot of differences between the different routes, how you can apply for it. And thankfully, we have once again the very knowledgeable and very helpful Sandra Gomes Pinto, who is here to explain all about Portuguese citizenship and how one might go about obtaining it. So we've had so many questions from people, actually quite a few, covering all the different ways that you can obtain Portuguese citizenship. So I'm going to be asking those to Sandra. Anybody else who has a question that you haven't already asked, you are more than welcome to ask in the Q&A section. Sandra has her team here and they will be doing their very best to help. There may be some things that people don't know offhand and need further research, and that is exactly what the team and Sandra is here to do. They will make sure that people get the answers that they need. To begin with, I think it's a good idea, Sandra, if you introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your law firm and what you do in particular with regards to citizenship, but also other things like residency visas.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon to you all, and good morning for those who it's a little bit earlier. And first of all, it's a great pleasure to be once again with you, James. We do appreciate your honesty and the straightforwardness with which you present all your digital work. So for us, I think I'm saying this again and again, but I think we do share common values, and that makes life better and easier and a pleasure to work with you. So it's a very big pleasure for me and for my team to collaborate with you. I'm a lawyer in Portugal for 30 years. I was a partner for a big firm during 17 years. In the last 8, I created my own company. We focus a lot on helping those investing and moving to Portugal, although I have also a big track record in complex projects and in litigation and arbitration. Throughout the times, I have been talking throughout the world about investment in Portugal, litigation and arbitration, tax benefits in Portugal. Now I have a team, mostly women, very talented. We have Inaida Silva, who is our powerhouse. We have Alexandra, who is really, I have to say to Alexandra, stop working, but she's also a force of nature. And in our 50s, it's very good when people, it's Alexandra Paciencia, when people still have this enthusiasm. We have a new acquisition in our team, in our daily team, that is Marta Tamanini. She's also, she worked abroad for a long time, so she's very experienced with this relocation situation and the whole process, because she was relocated herself. Our aim in the office is to help people that are relocating and moving to Portugal, and also acquiring citizenship, and also investing, to have a good process, that they are safe, that their interests are fully protected. And this is our big goal. And we do like people at the office, so we do like to be of service and to make lives better for those who contact us and for those that we assist professionally. So we can help from A to Z, sometimes a little bit without. We will do our best to address the legal problems and also the relocation challenges of our clients. And so for those who have legal matters or who are interested in moving to Portugal, relocating, acquire citizenship. We also have specific experts on these fields that only do this, and that can help in very professional way all our clients.
Thank you so much, Sandra.
This is it. Yes.
And we were talking just a moment before this started, kind of the nature of the work of a lawyer and why someone might need to use one for something like a visa application or a citizenship application, that the law, and I don't know if this is just a Portuguese thing or an everywhere thing, the law isn't as black and white as it might seem.
You know, sometimes when we just read the law, we lawyers and very experienced lawyers, it's very difficult to interpret the law. And with the visas, namely with the D7 visa that has already some years and that we have been working nonstop during the last years, what you notice is Portugal is very bureaucratic. There are many details. The process is evolving, so it's always changing. And also it varies from consulate to consulate. Some of them want lease contracts notarized. Some of them don't want notarized. Some of them, Washington told us black and white, if the person is not receiving a pension or a passive regular income, they cannot apply for D7. Whereas we have experienced that people were able to apply just with savings. Every day we have a novelty. We have a very big list in the office, and every day we are learning something new about a visa, about a process. And some people in the consulate say, this paper was not necessary. And the others say, you should have brought the other one. So, but we as a disclaimer say to our clients, take it all. And they take very organized files. And this is what, until now, we have had 100% successful applications. It's just hard work, picking the detail and trying to understand at each stage what is needed, what is necessary. And we understand that the process, the D7 process, varies a lot. It's different in England, it's completely different and more demanding in Canada. And in each of the locations in the States, it's also to say what was their experience like, what they said it would be, what was not necessary, what was superfluous, what they should have brought. So we are every day, and I'm not exaggerating, every day learning with the process and trying to navigate and then standardized procedure that where the person that is looking at the process and analyzing it still has a lot of discretionary power. So sometimes the way the process goes also depends on the person and on the mood of the person in that particular day. But if everything is very organized, it becomes more difficult to create problems or difficulties. I don't know if the Portuguese government wants, through the bureaucracy, to make this route more difficult. I don't know, but probably this might be the case.
I don't know either, but they've certainly created a business opportunity for yourself.
Don't take it. I think it's not, I'm not inventing and I'm not creating
Yes.
that people do need a lawyer. I think perhaps that are very super organized persons that don't think that they might need, but just to tell you, just on the 2nd of January, I went with a client to the AIMA appointment. First of all, I got there and they said the government gave the day off, so there was no appointment. I decided to stay in Coimbra till the 3rd, and then because I thought if the appointment was on the 2nd, they will attend me on the 3rd. But they said, no, we have too much to do. We won't take you on the 3rd. But then it was very good that I went there, because the appointment would be on the 5th, and the client would not have any clue of the new date if I had not been there. And then when I went there, they asked, the client had the files super organized, and she said, probably I don't need you. Everything is super organized. You told me everything was needed. I have everything very well cataloged. It's perfectly an index. I won't have any problems. But then in the end, the person in SEF said that the travel insurance was not enough because they could not see the number of the insurance, but then the number was there. And then they could not see the coverage, but then we could explain that the coverage were there. And then it was a D8, they could not see the pay slips. And fortunately, I had brought them. I have a fantastic team, and they put everything possible in the file. So there was the pay slips additional to the contract and to the bank transfers of the amount for the D8. So I do think that if you're going to a foreign country where you are not proficient in the language, even for me as a lawyer, as a very experienced lawyer, is a little bit challenging because I have surprises all the time. Once they asked for, I don't know what it was, but it was the American Social Security card. They have never asked for that, and they never asked for it again. But now I ask all my American clients to bring it. So I think it might be, I don't know, if you like to be adventurous and try your luck and to face the possibility to have to start all over again from the beginning, I think it might be possible to go without help. Otherwise, I think it would be more challenging.
Well, Caitlin has commented, and she said she decided to do it herself, but she strongly advises against doing it yourself. She says, get a good lawyer. It's not worth trying to do it yourself.
But let me tell you also something about the citizenship itself. In terms of citizenship, lawyers can do the application online, whereas an individual cannot do it. And that doing an application online, although the process of citizenship is taking more time than would be then it is taking a lot of time because there are lots of people applying. The fact that you do it online eliminates two stages of the previous process, namely the digitalization of all the documentation and also the distribution of the process. And so it eliminates already a lot of work that used to take a lot of time. So immediately there's an advantage. And also sometimes it's extremely difficult when there's applications through parents or grandparentage. It's difficult to get the birth certificates because now everything is online in the civil registry, but before we didn't have everything online. So we faced challenges asking, and sometimes there was a change in the name and there was so sometimes it's very challenging, and you have to be very persistent to obtain the right documents, especially when they have some years.
Okay. And I guess, is it true that if you do things online, it's a little bit easier to know that things have been received and things like that?
Yes, because they show, we can see the stages of the process.
Okay.
So it's easier to have an idea what's the stage, if the process was submitted, if it is being analyzed, what is the status of the process. Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for telling us about the benefits of using a lawyer for citizenship. That's really helpful for those on the fence deciding whether to do that. I'm going to jump into the questions now. So the first one I think a lot of people are asking is, what is the current time frame for obtaining citizenship, and does it depend on the route in terms of whether it's for naturalization or a parent?
Yes. I will start with the second question because it's easier.
Okay.
So it does depend on the route. There are some routes easier than others. Namely, if you are obtaining through parents, it's easier than the other grounds. It used to take something like 1 year. Now, many times it's taking longer because we have lots of people applying. We had cases that it took 2 years. But as always, as with the D7 and as with the general time frames in Portugal of public services, is extremely difficult to give a certain date. But I would say 1 year to 2 years.
Okay.
Hoping that these online procedures will make things better and that the Portuguese government will make the procedure more efficient. So it will take less time in the future.
Okay. And would you say there are any downsides to obtaining Portuguese citizenship?
Of course, I'm super biased, as you already had as you already mentioned, but I think it's great to have a Portuguese passport. Worldwide, and according to the international index, is considered one of the best passports in the world. I would say perhaps the fifth. It allows you to travel, to live, to work, to study within 198 countries, which is huge. And it gives you the possibility to travel and within the Schengen space without needing a visa. And it gives you also civil and political rights of an European citizen. So I believe that is huge. On top of that, it gives you the possibility to reside in Portugal without restriction. What I have noticed from our clients moving here is that people are healthier, happier, sparing more money, namely those coming from the States or from the United Kingdom, and having a better life, less stress, with the possibility to eat in a nice restaurant without it being absurdly expensive, drinking a good bottle of wine. Our Americans and British clients say they cannot believe the price of the wine and the quality of the wine. I almost don't drink alcohol. So but the truth is it's the small pleasures of life. I think you can lead a very good life here. And having a Portuguese passport allows you to reside here without any restriction. And on top of that, I would add peace and being a peaceful country. I didn't know, and talking with so many American clients, and in many places, children don't play in the playground anymore. People live in small circuits of protection. And so having the possibilities for women to go out at night, and that not being super scary, having the possibilities that your children can walk to a game, or can walk to school, or can go out with their friends without you thinking that immediately there would be something terrible happening. Shooting being still very rare here. I think this is huge. This is huge in a world perspective. And also, we didn't have this notion, but also our healthcare, namely, we have been facing severe problems in the public healthcare, but altogether, we still rank 12th in the world in terms of healthcare. And being a poor country, some of our American clients don't believe when they receive a bill in the hospital. And this is again huge. And I feel it's still a medicine and the healthcare providers that is focused on the people. It's extremely human. Most of the doctors here, you're not afraid that they are all concerned about charging you, and that they will operate if there are other things to do, or they are. So it's still a very humanized medicine and very high quality. And for the foreigners, it's very affordable. So it's still a great benefit.
Absolutely.
And let me add, if you acquire Portuguese citizenship, you can also access to Portuguese education. And although we Portuguese are very critical, as always, of education, I already mentioned that, but I will do it again. For instance, my son studied electronic engineer and computer science. He studies in a public university that ranks very well worldwide. I paid something 800 euros per year in the university, and this is huge. Of course, you have to do an exam to enter you have to do a test and tests to enter these universities, but then again, it's a huge advantage when we hear about the nightmares of students' loans in US or in other countries. So I think this is very good also.
Absolutely. Healthcare and education are two big reasons
just for you not to say that I didn't answer the question, I would say the only disadvantage of acquiring Portuguese citizenship is for those countries that do not accept double citizenship, which are less and less nowadays. But you would, once you acquire the Portuguese citizenship, you would lose the citizenship of your country of origin.
Okay. Let's see. So someone's asking if they have an option to apply for citizenship, possibly through a parent or grandparent, and they are wondering whether it's faster to get citizenship and then move to Portugal, or to apply for a residency visa like the D7 or D8 or golden visa.
I think definitely D7 and D8 would be a better rule and a quicker route to moving to Portugal and to obtain residency here. And it would have the bonus for those who are applying through grandparentage. They will need to prove the connection to the Portuguese community and the knowledge of the Portuguese language. So it's easier to acquire it here once you're here than before. So definitely it's better the D7 or the D8. At this point, I would not advise the golden visa route unless you do want to have the option to reside, but cannot reside in Portugal now, because the golden visa is taking a lot of time to proceed and requires you to invest normally as a standard investment 500,000 euros, whereas with D7 and the D8, although there are financial requirements, no investment is required.
Okay. And just in terms of timeframes, you mentioned sort of citizenship might be about 1 to 2 years at the moment.
Yes.
How does that compare to a D7 or D8 application?
It's always, when you ask me about timelines and timeframes, I would say perhaps 6 months, but it also depends how soon the people gather all the documentation and also on the specific situation of the consulate that will be competent for a given person. Because as you know, probably San Francisco sometimes takes four months to get an appointment. At this time in London, it's extremely difficult to get appointments, but now yesterday we got some. So, but until there was challenging obtaining appointments in London, but so it varies also from place to place. So it's really hard to give a standard, an accurate number of time.
Okay. And a similar question relating to time. Someone has submitted a citizenship application and they've not seen any progress. Is this normal?
Yes, it is normal. Unfortunately, it is normal. But as always, I would advise, if you have a lawyer working for you, you should every month contact them and talk to them and ask if there is any update, anything they can do. There is no harm in doing so. Being aware that and conscious that you might have 4 months, 5 months where nothing happened and you have no news about the process. Unfortunately, this is common and normal in Portugal.
Okay. And in terms of, we've talked about a few different routes to obtaining citizenship. Which would you say is the easiest route?
It depends on your specific situation. It have
Okay.
to be assessed case by case. So if your parent is Portuguese, definitely this is the easiest route for you to acquire. The most common route for those that don't have Portuguese ancestry, I would say, is the 5 years or 5 years of residency in Portugal, plus which also require knowledge of the language and strong ties to the community. You prove connection, a strong connection to the community.
And what would some of those connections that you could show be?
The knowledge of the Portuguese language, property in Portugal, business in Portugal, bank account in Portugal, knowing the basics of the culture and of being part of community, of associations. I think this would be being part of a soccer club. I think all these things matter. There are still discretionary powers interpreting what is a strong connection with the community, but I believe this requirement will be stronger and stronger, and perhaps your authorities will be more demanding in respect to this requirement.
Okay. And I can see why you're saying for people who have a Portuguese grandparent, it's in a way it's easier to live in Portugal because you have all these opportunities to create ties to the Portuguese community that you might not in other parts of the world.
And also to learn the language. It's easier being here.
Sure. Well, speaking of the language, there are a couple of questions related to that because I know a lot of people really get overwhelmed with the idea of sitting the Portuguese exam. So hopefully you can put their mind at ease a little bit with regards to that, because I know it isn't as bad as people sort of worry that it will be. But first of all, is this always a requirement to sit the A2 exam?
Is what? No, it's not always a requirement. So if you have Portuguese parents, you're not required to show and to prove knowledge of the Portuguese language. Sephardic Jews do not need to prove knowledge of the Portuguese language. If you're acquiring citizenship through your children, which is possible, you're not required to show that you know Portuguese language. So there are many situations where this is not required.
Okay. Do you know if there are exemptions for those who might have a hearing disability or any other kind of disability that would make it harder for them to complete the exam?
Yes, there are always alternatives. This is a constitutional right.
Okay.
For those with disabilities to have alternatives, yes.
And do you know if there's any point at which an age cutoff after which you don't need to show that you've passed the language exam?
I think yes. I don't know exactly what it is, but I can come back to you. But after some time, you're not required to know the exam. Perhaps someone in my team can help you, or someone that has this question, I will answer to it later. But after a certain age, people are not required to know the language when they are applying.
Okay, fantastic. Now we're getting on to questions about naturalization, which is, as I understand it, when you've lived in Portugal for 5 years legally. On that note, actually, there is a little bit of an announcement in the news over the past couple of days about the law changing. I know it isn't in effect yet, but perhaps you could sort of give people a brief overview of what that means.
Yes, so the Parliament approved alterations of the nationality law, but it's in general terms. So this is not yet effective. So because it will have to be promulgated by the president, and as you know, we have a semi-presidential regime. So the president has important powers. So there still can be a political veto or a constitutional veto to this law. And there are other also period of grace that in this case it was not eliminated. So we still don't know if this law will be effective. And besides that, we will still have to see the regulation of the law, and we still have to see how the services will apply, how the law will be applicable by the services, so the registry services. So there are still many interrogation points in respect to alteration. One important aspect of this new project of law, of the bill that that was approved by the Parliament, is that all those the time where people, from the time people initiate a residency application, now will count for citizenship purposes. So this time, when you apply for residency in Portugal and you start the process, this time will be taking into account for the 5 years of residency, which is a requirement for citizenship. So that was a question in the previous, before this alteration, although the services normally interpreted that it was necessary to have a resident permit card to start counting for the 5 years. So it might be huge, because sometimes in certain cases people wait 2 years, 3 years for a residency application, and this time we will count for the 5 years of residency to apply later for citizenship. So this is huge. We also noticed that in terms to Sephardic Jews, we already had a previous alteration of the law that made it much more difficult for someone from originated that had Sephardic Jews ancestry from Portugal or the Iberian Peninsula. It was already difficult because they had to show the connection throughout time with the Portuguese community. And now they are also required, they will be required to reside 3 years in Portugal prior to initiating any application for Portuguese citizenship. So this route of the Sephardic Jews will be even more complicated. Another alteration is for those that are adopted, even after 18 years, they may have the possibility to apply for citizenship through parents if they do it within a 3 years time frame. I think this will be the main, although there are also other alterations, but I will repeat again, these alterations haven't entered into force. They probably will enter into force in February, although there is still some certain uncertainty in respect to that, because there might be a political veto or a constitutional veto from the president, and we need to see the regulation to understand exactly how these alterations will be applicable. And we also need to see the practice from the services to understand what will be the real impact of these alterations of the law.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you for explaining that, Sandra. You've answered one of the other questions that came up quite a lot, which is currently at what point does the clock start ticking for citizenship? So if I understood you correctly, right now, it's when you get your residency permit. In the future,
Yes.
It might be when you put in the application, but you need to see how this works in practice.
But then also with the law, the application has to be successful.
Okay.
Because if you initiate an application, it's not successful, this time will not count.
Okay, very good to know. And I do notice, it's just a proposal, but the changes to the law regarding Sephardic Jews is requiring them now to live in Portugal, which is a little bit more what you've talked about in previous webinars. Yes. You see more of a push to get people to integrate rather than just be able to obtain citizenship.
Which makes all the sense. And that's why the strong connection with the community, which was a requirement that sometimes the authority didn't pay much attention to, I believe that it will be more and more important and perhaps more and more demanding.
Okay. Let's see next. Do people need to purchase property to qualify for citizenship?
No, not at all. Although property might be one of the elements to be considered connection with the Portuguese community, but it's not mandatory to acquire Portuguese citizenship.
Okay. Now, I've heard it said that you can, if you live in Portugal, not just for 5 consecutive years, but for any 5 years within a 15-year period, that this would qualify for citizenship through naturalization. Do you know if this is correct?
Yes, this is correct, but you still have to show the connection to the community, the knowledge of the Portuguese language, so other requirements, but still Portugal, it's very indulgent and the requirements for citizenship are less demanding than the majority of other countries. Portugal is still quite generous in these fields, but perhaps this might change in the future. We don't know.
Okay. And for those that are thinking about applying for citizenship after 5 years, they would also, I believe, have the opportunity to apply for permanent residency at that point. Should they be doing both?
Yeah, they might, but there's no need. Okay. I think if they meet the requirements for citizenship, they should just apply for citizenship.
And renew their temporary residency?
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
And for those that, for whatever reason, are thinking about leaving Portugal, should they apply for citizenship before leaving, or are they still eligible to apply after they've left if they've already lived for 5 years in Portugal?
They are still they can still apply after leaving, but I think from practical terms, for every reason, it's easier when you are still here to apply.
Okay, fantastic. Very good advice. I'm going to move on to some of the other questions now, which are about other routes to obtaining citizenship. But I just wanted to let people know that if you have a question to ask, there's a Q&A section, which you can find at the bottom, and Sandra's team will be able to answer you directly there with anything that you have. If you ask it in the chat, then it is seen by everybody and they're not able to reply to you directly and privately. So if you could just do it in the Q&A section.
Yes. And if you want, you can email us. And I think as we did before, for the first 50 people that contact us, we will do a 15-minute consultation for free.
Okay.
Yes.
Fantastic. That is very, very generous. I'm going to put the email address in the chat so that everybody has that. So if a call with Sandra and her team is something that is going to be useful to you, I would advise you to get in there and be one of the top 50. So let's see. We have got a question now about marriage, which is, I guess this is the question. Portugal recognizes citizenship, first of all, between people who are married and people who are in a long-term relationship. Is this correct, Sandra?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Now, if someone had been in a relationship for, say, 10 years and they were thinking about getting married, would the clock reset at the point they got married, and they would have to wait another few years before they could apply for or the partner could apply for citizenship?
I would say no, because after living together, you acquire the rights according to the law to apply for citizenship, and you would not lose these rights because you got married. I believe the only challenge when we have a non-marital partnership is the proof of the existing of this relationship. And that might be challenging. That might be challenging in citizenship. That might be challenging in family reunification procedures. I think in terms of proof, there is also always additional challenge, and it might be more difficult. So if you're about to pursue, and if your objective is to pursue, or goal is to pursue the citizenship, it's better to get married because you want to get married. It is not only because of the citizenship. It's a very serious step to make. But in terms of proof of the process, it's easier when persons are married.
Okay, fantastic. That is good to know. Next, moving on to, well, just one more question on that. I understand, am I right in saying that you would need to show ties to the community and the language with the marriage route, or is that more discretionary?
Yes, you still have, they still ask for us to put elements for in respect to the connection to the community. Yes.
And just going back to those ties and the language, when do you think someone should start working on the Portuguese language or working on building those ties to the Portuguese community?
I think once you have the objective to obtain citizenship through naturalization, once you start residing here, I think you should start, or sometimes even before, when you're in your home country preparing the application. I have lots of clients that are already learning Portuguese, and that could be quite important.
I agree. I think it's a good idea because I know from experience that if you don't start beforehand, you arrive in Portugal and you immediately wish you had some of the language, and the first Portuguese people that you speak to, they're going to speak to you in English, and then they're probably always going to speak to you in English because you started out that way. So it's better to try and start with some Portuguese.
Yes, the only options, what I notice is clients that go to very remote areas. It's perhaps the only place where there are some people that still don't know. Yes. Don't know English, are not proficient in English, and those have more options to learn Portuguese. I had some clients in Vila Nova de Poiares and other clients in Alentejo, and those have more chance to speak Portuguese because people are not proficient in English, but that is more and more rare. That is very rare in Portugal at the moment.
Yes, I would say it's definitely one of the upsides to moving to Portugal is that English is so widely spoken, but it can also be a little bit of a downside in the sense that it's so easy to speak English that you are not forced as much. So if you really want to learn Portuguese, it sounds like you should move to the Alentejo or another remote part of Portugal.
No, you can start. I think get a good private tutor, and that would be very efficient, or a group of persons Portuguese altogether, and I think that would be could be very efficient too. And don't get scared because of the accent, because the accent may be a little bit scary, but once you understand the basics of the accent, if you know French or if you know Spanish, the structure of the language is very similar, so it's not such a big deal. Don't get scared by the accent.
So moving on to being born in Portugal, I know that different countries have different rules regarding whether being born automatically makes you a citizen, and Portugal changed theirs recently. So right now, if a child is born in Portugal, would they automatically be granted Portuguese citizenship?
No.
Okay.
So it's mandatory that one of the parents is a legal resident in Portugal for 1 year, or if this is not the case, that at least one of the parents was born in Portugal.
Okay. And if a child is able to obtain citizenship, can parents obtain citizenship through their children?
Yes, they can.
Okay.
But you do have to live in Portugal for 5 years. But in this case, it's not mandatory the knowledge of Portuguese language.
Okay. So it's assumed that because you have a child here or with Portuguese nationality, that you would already have a strong connection to Portugal.
Yes,
Okay.
to the community.
And I wanted to ask a little bit about the obtaining citizenship for those who are in countries that were once a part of Portugal, like Goa and East Timor and Macau and all these places. Is there a general rule for whether people from those parts of the world can still apply for Portuguese citizenship?
Yes, the general rule is that if a person was born before the independence of this country, it's still possible, or before if a person is a child of, if the parent was born before the independence.
Okay, fantastic.
I think this would be possible, but in these cases, and we have several of those cases, there are additional challenges in terms of documentation, because now everything is online, but it's really hard to obtain certain birth certificates in Goa from the Portuguese time. Sometimes it's really challenging. And you do have very good people in the field there, but it's still much more challenging to do that.
Okay, I've noticed that sometimes even with people who are looking for a grandparent or even further back birth certificate, someone who left Portugal and went to the US, that it's also sometimes challenging to get a hold of that.
It's very challenging, and sometimes people change names, so it's very challenging. We are searching for some. We have been very successful in many places, namely in the Azores.
Okay.
But it's challenging, and we do have to have the goodwill of the personnel of the civil registry, because it's troublesome. It does require work.
So I have one more of our questions that was asked just from before the webinar, and this is more relating to visas rather than citizenship. And it's if someone is already applying for one visa, such as let's say the golden visa, and they decided to switch or they wanted to switch to the D7 or D8, is it possible to make that change? And is that something they would have to do back in their country of origin or residence?
This is a tricky question, because some years ago it was possible. 1 year, more or less 1 year ago, we tried with a client that had a family reunification procedure under the golden visa. And one of the child of this client of ours wanted to apply for a student visa. And they denied the student visa because we already had a family reunification procedure going on. I don't know. I think it would be challenging in many cases. Some consulates would not accept that you apply for another visa whilst you're with already a pending golden visa application. Okay. But you can always, in some cases, it's taking so long that it might be worse to start from scratch, but it's always hard to say. It will have to be asserted case by case.
It does sound like, again, it's something that's complicated, and it's something where your expertise would be particularly helpful there. You would know the time frames.
Yes, and sometimes even talking with a specific consulate to understand what are their views and their practice in that respect.
Okay, fantastic. And I just wanted to say that Abraham has commented, and he said he did the A2 language exam and he got muito bom, which is the highest level.
Great. Yes.
Yes. He said the listening was the most challenging bit, and so he recommends that people really start working on listening practice early on, just to sort of tune their ears to the sounds of the Portuguese language.
Yes. But you know what I think? When I studied languages, I had to have a dictionary and reading books, a lot of pages, and we really had to work hard. now with these apps and with these online things, there are so many possibilities that I think it's much easier if you want, you have the possibility to train a lot by yourself. And this is great. And this was a chance that we didn't have before. But what I must say is muito bom is great, but you only have to have 55%. And this is no different than a first certificate test or Certificat für Deutsch als Fremdsprache. It's know the basics, being able to understand a basic text, being able to express yourself in basic terms, and the oral comprehension also. But with these online possibilities, I think it's not very difficult. You have lots of means to practice.
Absolutely. There are some great resources out there for learning European Portuguese, and with so many things going on YouTube, or you can watch some Portuguese television with subtitles as well. There's a lot more out there now.
Yes. I think the idea is to start studying for the day you want to start planning residing in Portugal. You should start to learn the language.
I think so. And I think there's also, it's worth mentioning that if for those that are going to sit the A2 exam, sometimes you have to book several months in advance. So you don't want to get to year 5, be able to qualify for citizenship, and then you've got to wait another 6 months before you can actually get an exam spot to pass the exam and get your results.
This is a great tip. This is really important.
So that brings us to the end of all of the questions that people asked beforehand. Is there anything else you want to say about Portuguese citizenship, Sandra, and obtaining it?
And I think, I don't know, perhaps we will end as we started. So what I've noticed from our clients is that people that moved here have, in general terms, better quality of life. And so having a Portuguese passport, which is, again, one of the best passports in the world, grants you a lot of the possibility to work, live, study in any European country, and to travel freely within the Schengen space. So I think, and to have lots of benefits from education to healthcare, and many other things in Europe. So I think it's very extremely beneficial to obtain Portuguese citizenship. I think at this point we meet a lot of important boxes in terms of a peaceful country with good healthcare, with a great quality of life, very welcoming to expats, with great internet for many Americans and British, better than at home, the paid internet. And also possibilities for digital nomads and people with new ventures. I think Portugal at this moment, it's very live, and it's a very good place it's a very good hub for new businesses and to develop business, because we will also have a digital nomad visa for those with innovative projects. So I think Portugal meets a lot of boxes, and I do think many of our clients are happier and less stressed here.
Yes, I completely agree with that. I think, some people look at the Portuguese passport as an EU passport because it gives them the right to live in so many EU countries. But what's noticeable is that so many people from the rest of the EU are moving to Portugal.
Yes.
People from places like Germany or Ireland or France are coming to Portugal for, like you say, the better quality of life, the sunshine, the food, the lower cost of living in many cases. So it is worth really considering not just obtaining Portuguese citizenship, but thinking about making your home here.
And especially the French, we noticed, and some of the British too, we have less taxes, we don't have inheritance tax, we don't have the real estate taxes are lower. And so life in general is more affordable. So that's always, but I think the most important thing is to have a better life and a better quality of life. This might be the greatest point.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that. I think that is the most important thing you can give yourself is a better quality of life. I'm going to share Sandra's email once more because I know that there are a lot of people that are interested in getting in touch with her and her team. So that's going out to you. The webinar is being recorded and I will get it live on YouTube within the next day or two as soon as it's finished processing. But I just want to thank everybody for joining. And I especially want to thank Sandra for sharing all of her knowledge and taking the time really to answer all of those questions. It is difficult when you're looking into information about moving to Portugal or anything to do with obtaining citizenship to get actual real answers answered by a lawyer. And so I know that people will find this very, very valuable. So I really appreciate it, Sandra. And I know from the thank you comments that everybody else does too.
Thank you, James. So thank you so much for having me, and thank all the persons that attend. It's a pleasure being here. And if you have any questions, just contact us. And of course, we will, as soon as possible, we will come to your questions.
Okay. Thank you so much, Sandra.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.